Hi. Look at all these awesome people here. I love our community so much. I'm so excited to be here today. Today is a really special day in a few different ways for me. First one is it's my parents' 43rd wedding anniversary, and they're sitting right over there. A second reason is it was about 3 years ago when my husband Brandon and I decided to join forces and create our firm, Holben Architecture and Design. And it was a big leap of faith, but it's been such a great process. And I remember opening our office up in the awesome Kittery Foreside, right above Lil's, and being so excited to be there. And right about that time, CreativeMornings was founded by my wonderful friends, Genevieve and Noel. And the first few talks were held at Bowie in Kittery. And I remember going and just feeling so excited to be a part of this community and how creative it is, and to be so inspired by the speakers who were there. So that really got me thinking, like, gee, I really hope this business really works out and I get to talk about what I'm doing someday. So luckily, 3 years later, I get to be here. And I'm really thrilled to be here. So my topic, Authentic Design Life, is really, when I thought about honesty, and I've had a while to think about it, I just realized that my whole life is really about design. I am a designer through and through, and design informs my life, and my life informs my design. And I thought it would be fun to kind of talk you through the different things I've learned throughout the course of my life and my career that kind of have inspired my design and also the way I live my life. So I'm going to kind of walk you through my truths and the things I've learned, and how honesty is just so critical to creativity and collaboration. Because if you're not honest and if you're not being your true self, you really can't generate ideas and present them to people. You have to have courage to do that and to bring your ideas forth. And it's also critical to collaboration, because if we're not honest, then we don't develop partnerships with people, with colleagues, designers, clients. And just bringing your full self to your work, I think, is just such a huge part of creativity. So I'm going to walk you through a few truths. The first one is art and science thinking. So my childhood, I grew up in Newburyport, Massachusetts, so it kind of grew up in this idyllic, beautiful place. But the house I grew up in wasn't exactly your typical house. It was filled with antiques and reptiles. And so I think at the time I didn't think it was so cool, but now I'm like, that was really cool. So at one point we had like 15 different reptiles: snakes, lizards, giant frogs. And it was just fascinating, and it was really fun to be around all those animals, and I really grew a love for weird animals and hanging out with them. And also my father up there, you see him, that's an old picture, but he still looks handsome. He's a great collector of really unusual antiques, and he was always bringing home these cool things and sharing them with me and just kind of marveling in the design of them. You know, the story behind the design, why they were designed that way. And I just always got my brain thinking about design and how interesting and the history of design. And we had an old car, and we were in the parades, and also my great-grandfather was a really great painter, and I never got to meet him, but I was really inspired by his paintings. And this is one he did, it's about 100 years ago, looking from their home in the Bronx towards New York City. Wow. And it's one of my favorite paintings. Plus it's actually documenting history, which is great. So I was always fascinated by his life, and it kind of inspired me to think, like, you know, how great it is to just produce great pieces of art and design in your life, and you know, how much I'd love to do that someday. So high school came around, and you know, I was kind of your straight A, little bit nerdy kind of person. I was always studying, and I never got in trouble, and I was really studious, and I went to, you know, see my guidance counselor, and I was like, well, I don't even know what I want to go to college for. You know, it's like, I like science, I like art. You know, so I got the typical answers: be a teacher, be a nurse, be an artist. You know, never once in the conversation was the idea of design: be an architect, be an engineer, be a designer. And thinking back on that, I feel like that was a really missed opportunity, not being, you know, kind of thought of that could be a career for me, because it was obviously where my passions were. But so I picked science because I received a scholarship to James Madison University. So sounded good. So that's what I did. And then looking back, I'm so thankful I had that scientific education, because really it taught me so many things about life, about nature, how science works, how you do research, how you develop ideas and test them. And it's all around the scientific process, really. So you start being curious, you make observations, you form questions, you come up with ideas. It's creative. I mean, science is a creative process. And you experiment, you come to a conclusion, and then you keep going. You know, it's kind of an infinite process. And I think the process of science and scientific thinking is the part that I really love the most. So throughout college, I was kind of always trying to find a way to merge my love of art with science. So I did all these different sort of applications of that. I learned how to do scientific illustration. I took a special course, and these are some of my illustrations up there. And I thought, you know, this is fun. I love drawing all these beautiful animals and bugs. I especially love bugs and insects. I find them very cool. And I love doing that. I repainted all these models in our science museum. You know, that model of the lungs right there, very fabulous. I did photography. I took pictures of animals in jars and won an award for my photography. And I also kind of used my design sensibility and visual thinking to help me study, because, I mean, science degree is pretty brutal. It's organic chemistry, anatomy, physics, microbiology, and pretty hard things to learn. And I would kind of develop these ways of creating visual charts and things that would help me actually remember information and help me learn these things. So after doing all that, I decided my senior year to, instead of doing research, which is usually what you do when you receive a science degree, they let me do a thesis on scientific illustration. So I spent a whole year illustrating the 5 larval instars of this water-striding insect. Very exciting, very exciting. And you use a special microscope, and they're hyper accurate. So this is just one of them. There's 5 different stages. But you can see the scale line there, so they're microscopic. And I basically, for 2 semesters, was constantly stippling, which is dot, 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 every little dot, making these hyper accurate drawings. And these, working with my professor, Dr. Keffer, these insects had never been described before in any scientific journals or ever drawn. So our work was published, and it was very satisfying at the end of the year to have completed this. And I just really learned about the importance of accuracy and detail, and how being persistent and working on something for a long time could be very rewarding. And I also got to present my work at the end of the year to a bunch of my peers and my professors, and I realized that presenting was fun, that people actually wanted to be a part of the process. They enjoyed hearing about all the work I did, the approach to how I created the drawings. And I sort of got this flavor for what it was like to present work. So coming to the end of college, and this marks kind of the next period in my life where I learned to love design. And then that was really my true calling. So that's when I met Brandon. Yes, it's really good. I had to put that picture. He loves it when I share that picture with people.
That's some dedication.
So this is about 20 years ago, and Brandon and I first started dating. We've been together ever since. And coincidentally, we did go to high school together. So that's his high school photo on the bottom left. But Brandon and I never once had a conversation in high school. We didn't talk to each other. We knew who we were, but we were kind of in, different groups of people, and he was a year older, and we never talked. And I think if anyone had ever told me that this guy was going to be my lifelong partner in life and design, I would have just been so perplexed. But But luckily I met him towards the end of my college career, and when I met him, he was studying architecture at the University of Buffalo. And I just remember our first conversations and just realizing that he was this amazing, smart, interesting, deep guy who just loved architecture and knew he wanted to do it his whole life. And imagine that. Imagine just knowing what you want to do forever. I mean, I just couldn't relate to that. I wished I could, but I just couldn't. And so in kind of tagging along with him and kind of learning alongside him what he was learning in architecture school, I grew this huge appreciation for the profession. I mean, architecture is kind of one of the hardest, most intense design sports that there is. And I have a huge amount of respect for architects. These are some of his projects here. So naturally, when I graduated and I had nothing to do, I just, packed my car full of my stuff and took one of my dad's cool snakes and showed up at Brandon's bachelor pad in Buffalo and just crashed it because I was like, sure, I'll move to Buffalo. And it was really great being a part of his senior year of school. That's when I landed my first job, my first real job. This is my first business card. It's so exciting. It was at Downtown Graphics in Buffalo, New York. And basically, I had taken one course in computer graphics at James Madison. And I was really awesome at Quark Express. You guys remember Quark Express? Yes. Luckily, we at least were using computers by then, so that was a big thing. And I was a pre-press person. I learned all about the printing process. I set up film, I set up files, I laid out business cards, and it was really fun. And it kind of gave me my first taste of like design and graphic design. And I was like, this is pretty cool. I like this. So sort of fast forward a few years later, Brandon and I ended up moving back to this area. We lived in Portsmouth. And I had a few other jobs, another printing place, an ad agency, and did some more graphic work. And I was just feeling a little lost. Like, I love graphic design, but I'm not really sure print design is really my true love. I feel like I want to do something a little more complex, a little more meaningful, something that had a little more of a lifespan to it. So that's when I landed this position at Gamble Design, which is still here in Portsmouth. And I have to give a big shout out to Boyd Morrison, who hired me, because I pretty much begged him to hire me. I was like, you should hire me. I'm going to learn how to do all this stuff, and it's going to be great. So I guess I convinced him. And it was really the best experience. This period of time when I worked for him was really my design education. And so what I learned about and worked on was identity and environmental graphics and wayfinding programs. So suddenly I became exposed to this whole world of creating really in-depth identity work. This is an identity I developed for PAX World. And how an identity is really more than just a logo, how it's a brand, how it applies to the environment, how it's used, how you develop standards. And I was like, oh, this is so exciting. This is really detailed, like thoughtful design work. And then I learned all about how to create wayfinding programs. So how you do sign location plans, how you come up with a strategy for that, how you take architecture and you bring it into graphic design. I mean, I was like, this is amazing. This is like everything I love. It's architecture, it's design, it's graphic design. I learned all about how to create really detailed, accurate drawings in actual architectural scale. I was like, wow, I can actually do like a little tiny bit of architecture here, and how to write notes and specify materials. And this is this cool sign for Exeter Hospital, still there. It's like 15 years later, and it's a great sign, and it shows you how much life and how long great design can last. So this was awesome. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I soaked it up like a sponge. And this is another project I worked on, and I also realized how design can really affect people's lives in a positive way. How designing things like wayfinding can make people's lives better and make them more engaged with the environment. So this project for Crotch and Mountain is at this huge campus where they have everybody from young children to older adults who have brain injuries and other disabilities. It's a really amazing place. And imagine designing wayfinding for that kind of circumstance. You know, it was a challenge, and we thought up these symbols to help people navigate space, so that if you couldn't read or you had poor eyesight, you might actually know where you are in the campus. And at least it was fun as well. It felt good. It wasn't just a bunch of words on signs. It had some life and some meaning. And I realized through this project that, and just how much the people there loved it, like wow, like this is something I could really get behind. So at the end of my time at Gamble Design, Boyd wrote me this wonderful note, and I just love it. I just found it, actually. I mean, there's nothing like going through 20 years of design work to pull together a 20-minute presentation. But this just stood out, and he says, "I think it is the ability, the great fortune, in fact, to be able to inhabit and revel in the stimulating world of creative art form, expression, and space. That makes being a designer such a rewarding and exciting vocation." And just think about that. Like, how lucky am I to get to work in design? And I feel like that every day. During that time, I also met Massimo Vignelli, who's one of the greatest designers of our time, no longer with us, sadly, but him and his wife had a great partnership, and they created a great firm, and they designed everything from logos to the New York City subway map system to flatware, and he was such a great person too, and I just was so engaged when I met him. And one of the things he thought was that if you can design one thing, you can design anything. So imagine that. Imagine if you love design and you learn everything you need to learn about how to approach design, you could design anything. Like, wow, what a big world is out there, and how exciting is that? So I was really inspired by that in his life. And at that time, I decided to make a leap and move on to a larger company located up in New Hampshire. And I realized that, okay, I love design, I love science, I'm like doing all this stuff, and now like I have to show up. I have to give it a shot and do the big work and kind of like push myself and see what happens. I mean, if you never push yourself, how will you ever know what you're capable of, you know? And I'm so glad during this time I really did that. And looking back, I'm kind of like, how did I do that? I don't know. But I did it. So the company is called Brand Partners, formerly known as Willie Brothers, was bought out by a public organization and became Brand Partners and specialized in financial industry. So we did a lot of work in banking. And the time I started there, this was around 2002 or something, banking was a pretty dry place, you know, pretty traditional, not very engaging spaces, and the world was changing. You know, people want to be engaged with the places that they decide to put their money in or invest with. And I was kind of came on board during this time. And one of the first projects I did was the rebranding of the fleet. So they had Bank of America had just purchased Fleet, and I designed the rebranding of all their fixtures. One of my first projects as a designer. It's that really super exciting fixture there on the left. And then kind of in doing that, I realized there was so much opportunities for design, for creating really exciting things in these environments, and there's tons of them. Banks are everywhere. So over the course of my 6 years at Brand Partners, I was promoted 5 times, and I ended up becoming the director of design strategy, and I was on senior management by the end of my time there. And I found that through the years, you know, just offering up creative ideas and really engaging with clients and really showing up for these big presentations, I really realized what I had in me to do this work, and also to lead teams of designers. So we had an awesome crew of architects, designers, engineers, and what it was like to bring all those people to really create awesome work, because you need a lot of people to create big work. And part of that work largely was for Bank of America. It was one of our largest clients. So over the years, it started out with kind of boring fixtures, and it evolved to be, you know, dynamic window displays, full environments, retail concepts. This is a piece we designed that was in Grand Central Station that I was really proud of, to have, you know, pieces in these sort of high-profile locations. And I loved it, and I loved the clients that I worked with. Also during that time, Brandon and I took a trip to California, and we went to the Eames House. And if you've never been there, you need to go. It's an amazing place. And Charles and Ray Eames are another inspirational design team. And they had this kind of same belief that you can design anything. And they design everything from, you know, museum exhibits about math to architecture to movies. I mean, they just were these amazing design people. And I just remember going to their home, and they've kind of kept it the way it was with all their interesting stuff, and feeling like, I want a life like this. Like, this is so amazing to just live surrounded by design. And I feel like Brandon and I can do this. Some point we'll really be able to do this. And I was just so excited about that idea. So then we bought our first home in Kittery. It was this amazing little tiny ranch on the left. And over the years, we've had a lot of fun adding to it, designing it. And it's kind of like our first project together. And we still live there. We're so proud of it. Put up this modern contemporary addition on it. Brandon built a lot of it with his own 2 hands. And it's not a huge house, but it's our house, and we love it. We love the layout of it, and we love what it means to have a home like this for us in Kittery. We love living in Kittery. So we kind of realized, okay, we can design a house together. That's interesting. We could do that. And then this little man showed up, Elias, who's here. I'll just embarrass you a little bit. He's awesome. He's a lot bigger now, and and he's just an amazing kid. And as a lot of you know, parenthood just adds this whole other layer of emotion to your life. And I realized, I was kind of in the middle of all this big work, and I wasn't really prepared to be a parent. And I did get a little pushback. This is, 11 years ago, and some people were like, oh, your career was really just taking off. Like, I don't know, how's it gonna go? And I was like, it's gonna keep going fine. Like, I'm gonna do what I wanna do. And so I felt a little like I had to prove myself, and I feel like it's a lot better these days, but it added all this emotion. And I think when your emotion's at the surface of you in parenthood and other kinds of points in your life, it just brings that much more honesty to what you're doing, and it makes you that much more passionate about your work. So at the end of my time at Brand Partners, I had just done so much work. I had done massive presentations, transformation programs for Wachovia Bank, a whole retail concept for Morgan Stanley, design guidelines for UPS Express. I did all these big presentations. I would go to New York City, and I would often be presenting my work to a room full of men in suits, often. I was often the only female in the room. And I just found every little morsel of energy I had in my body to do this. It was just a time of prolific work. And I realized looking back on it that I think that's why I did, so much great work at that time, was because I was a little tired, because I was a bit emotional, because I was just like grasping at every kind of bit of energy I had and producing a vast amount of work. And I'm just so thankful that I got to go through this experience, and I had an opportunity to do this. So I really was just loving it. I was in it. I was working hard. And then the next part of my life sort of happened, which is kind of when you're like really excited and you're really kind of working hard, and then things just change and you just don't know what to do with yourself. So that's what happened here. And I really had to learn how to dig deep and get back to what really mattered to me. And I remember sitting down and like jotting this out on a piece of paper, like what matters to Elisa, like design and my family and design. Like I just want to focus on those things. I didn't want to focus on other distracting drama that sometimes comes with working at large companies, right? So Brand Partners sort of imploded in a fiery mess. It was a publicly owned company, and you can read more about it, but there was whistleblowing, there were lawsuits, and it was just a disaster. And even though we were doing great work and we had a great team, unfortunately, there were circumstances beyond our control. And I was kind of involved in this, being on senior management. So you can imagine, I'm like this tired mom who just like loves design, and I'm like sitting in these meetings, and they're really stressful and icky, and I was like, this is not my truth. Like I can't do this. And I had to leave Brand Partners shortly before it closed. And it was really one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I love the people I work with. I love the team I had. I love the work I was doing. I love the clients. I think everybody knew how much I loved it, but leaving had to happen for my own personal sanity. So I left and I did something else similar, which probably wasn't the best idea either. So I did that, and then I realized I just needed to be independent. So I set up my home office and I started Winter Holben Design. And fortunately, all the hard work I had put in and the relationships I had built through just loving design and being honest about my work landed me a gig where I became the creative director for the Bank of America account for another firm, but as a consultant. So I got to work from home in Kittery. We brought another child to the world. I got to just focus on my work, and it was just, I was so thankful for that time. I mean, it was a huge transition working from a big, huge place with a bunch of people all day to working home in your home office. But it was a welcome change at that time, and this is one of my projects I was at the installation for in New York City, all pregnant, you know, committed to my work, but I was there. And then Sonia came into the world, so we grew our family a little more. A lot of love for Miss Sonia, who recently broke her arm while I was preparing for this presentation, so life. I remember feeling all frazzled that day, like, she broke her arm, I can't work on my CreativeMornings presentation, what am I gonna do? And then I was like, I should just work on it now, because I am frazzled. Probably bring the best ideas out, you know? So that's what happened. So I'm really thankful I got to have a little bit of a pause, and I was still working on the big work that I love, but I was sort of like given this gift to scale back a little bit and focus on family. During that time also, Brandon and I had the opportunity to work on a real client partner project together, 3S Art Space. So we love 3S Art Space. We were there from the very beginning. Put a lot of love into that place, and I was on the founding board, and so that was a really great process, kind of getting it off the ground. And then eventually Brandon was the project architect for the design of the building, which was so exciting. And we would often spend our evenings, our vacations, or our drives to soccer games talking about 3S, talking about what can we do with the siding, what can we do with the lighting, what can we, how can we make this place awesome? And we just put a lot of love into it and really enjoyed working together on it. And then ultimately I got to design the wayfinding, so all the cool signage, and this is this concrete press sign that's out front that I obviously love because I'm hugging it. I don't know if a lot of people hug signs. Sometimes I hug signs. Like, I love a sign. But man, bringing that place to life and making it happen was so exciting. And we just feel so much pride in it, and we just love going there, and we love that they're thriving. And we just realized, like, what if we could do this all the time? I mean, this would be amazing to work together on amazing projects. Like, how do we do that? I mean, how do we start a firm? And that's a big, it was a big kind of question mark. So the last bit here, be honest, really. So there's nothing like having your own business to kind of force you to be honest, right? You have to bring yourself, you have to reflect the principles and approach of your work to other people, and you really just have to do it. And so I realized I had to, all the prior truths I talked about, I really had to bring that to my work and to find a way to kind of make the next step. So kind of in a quick hurry and not with a lot of planning, Brennan and I just decided to go for it. And we decided to kind of take what I had started to build, some work and design, and add architecture to it and become partners and build a multidisciplinary firm that really could do all kinds of design, because that's what excites us. Is everything from, graphic design, environmental graphics, architecture, interior design, and to kind of bring that approach into a small studio atmosphere. So, partnership is so easy. I mean, people love to ask me, what is it like really working with your husband? Like, everybody wants to know, like, tell me how hard it is. I want to know. And it's hard. I mean, there's a lot to work out. We have a complex, rich life filled with family and work. But at the end of the day, we're both so committed to design and to the process and to our work. And I think when you have this like very basic common values, it works because we're just always working to do our best work. And we have a lot of respect for each other's professions. Brandon is a crazy good architect, and I'm always impressed by what he's doing. And I'm always asking him questions, and he makes my work better. And I'm always bugging him, offering all these insights to how he could add great branding and great, emotion to these environments. So it's really an awesome collaborative effort. And since we started our firm, 2 of us in one little office in the Think Yard, we've grown in 3 years. We've kind of tripled our size. We have 4 people on staff right now. We're hiring 2 more people, so check it out. And we're really figuring out how to build a multidisciplinary firm because it's, we're not just doing architecture, we're doing all these other things, and it's complex, but it's exciting that it's so complex. So if you think about it, coming back to a little bit what I talked about previously, the scientific process is kind of the core of everything. I mean, it's a process that works, it's proven. And we kind of take that process and we adapt it to design. And I just love the design process. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I feel even more than I'm a creative designer, I'm an advocate for the design process. So you can see how it kind of adapts a little bit to creative thinking, but you observe things or you do research. Instead of forming questions, you generate ideas. We call it ideation, where you're just like throwing all these ideas out. The more ideas, the better. And bringing clients into that process is huge because if you bring them on board with the process and you let them add their ideas and their knowledge into the mix of design, they're much more likely to champion the work and to be on board with the change of design. So it's just hugely beneficial. Instead of forming a hypothesis, you form concepts, you develop it, you build it, you analyze it, and then you work on the next project. So this process is really the fun of creativity and design, and we basically use it for all of our work. So over the past few years, we've done a huge range of work, and I think it's really exciting to have an opportunity to do kind of this huge scope and work with small local clients and big clients. Everything from annual reports for Seacoast Science Center, another organization we love. Hi guys, love Seacoast Science Center. To hotel developments, to contemporary housing, to awesome local restaurants, to Great Rhythm. Great Rhythm is our first project together, and we won an award for it, and just a really great experience. And also proud to say that this year our firm was given the creative partnership with Bank of America. So my continued relationship with them and all the hard work I put in all the years, they really valued that. And now that we have established a firm, I get to continue my work with them. And I love everybody I work at Bank of America, some really great people. I'm really glad to have that work. So this range, I feel like, is so exciting. And it just kind of shows how working on different areas of design is beneficial overall. So kind of coming to the end here and the future and thinking about design and why it matters. We all know we're living in a time of a lot of change, right? It's just like overwhelming. And it's not going to slow down. It's just going to get faster. So design is a way to adapt to change. And I feel like there's so many important issues in design and kind of the world at large that we care about, things about the environment, about the housing crisis, all these different things. And we bring that emotion and that caring to our work. And we try to bring it into our design. And I think by engaging everyone in creativity design, you don't have to just be a designer to be creative or to design things. But our job really as designers is to bring clients into our process. And we have a professional obligation to do the best work for our partners and our clients. And by bringing them to the process of change and the process of design, we're much more likely to create positive change. And that's really what excites us for the future. So all of these truths, I'm proud to be bringing them to my work today. And I feel like over the next periods in my life, there'll be more truths that come up, and the world will keep changing, and the work will keep changing, and I hope to work on even more different kinds of design. But at the end of the day, I'm just so thankful that I get to be a designer and bring my story to you. And I'm so thankful that you're all here to learn a little bit more about me and my work. And an honest thank you to all of you.